What's up, you guys? It is Nita from Nita's Fluid Woodworks. Today, we're gonna be throwing some waves on this ocean charcuterie board. All right, so if you're working with pre-made boards, you wanna get their finish off at all costs. Like, it may look good and it may last a little bit, but if this is something that you're selling and you want quality over quantity, you're going to have to get this finish off because it's not gonna bond good. You can do it with a 150, 180 grit, and you're just gonna take the finish off the top. All right. All right, so after you sand the other finish off, you're gonna wanna make sure that there's no dust on your piece. I use 91% isopropyl alcohol just to wipe it all down. Once you do that, you're going to get some plastic down, protect your area, and get ready to pour our first layer of waves. All right, so I am going to mix up some UV art. I'm gonna do probably 200 mLs. I am doing B before A. If you don't have windows or ventilation in your shop, make sure you wear a respirator and protect your lungs. All right, so I am going to put this in some hot water so that way it mixes easier. Putting it in hot water lowers the viscosity of it and just allows it to mix and move around on your boards a lot easier. All right, so when you take your resin out of your water, make sure you dry your cup. Water and resin don't mix at all. I like to use 3 different blues. I use 3 blues because it reminds me of like the tropical waters, like just the shallow areas and the deeper areas. It reminds me of that. And I like to use paste. Some people use mica powders. My preference is pastes because it just reacts differently to the waves that you're doing. So now that I got that in there, we're gonna bring our board back. So you're gonna wanna make sure that your board is level. I know that my piece is level. If it's not, and you pour an ocean, it will go from one side to the other side and it will not look anything like what you started out with. For this, I like to use dark turquoise luster, and then I do a kind of mixture for the cobalt blue color that I use. This paste right here is kind of flat to me, so I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of mica powder in there just to match the other 2 blues, and it'll be a little bit more cohesive. All right, I'm gonna be using my wave kit. It's the white and the Cell Magic. When you're pouring your blues on here, you're gonna wanna stay away from the edges. You don't want the resin to start seeping over the sides before you get stuff where you need it. So I start out with my dark colors, like that. Then I move up. And after this, after you put these on here, then you can move it and make your waves however you want them. All right, so I do this part with my hands just because I can control it a lot better and move faster. Usually, typically when I do waves, I'm doing like a bunch of waves, and I want it to like blend like real water. So after this, what I'm gonna do is I am going to pour some clear on. We're gonna go half on the resin, half off the resin, and the same thing with the white. Before I do that, I'm gonna torch it. First, it's just gonna pop the bubbles, but it's also going to allow the resin to move a little bit easier once I start. All right, so now you're gonna get your clear on. When I first started doing oceans, I didn't realize that what you leave your board looking like is not what your board looks like when you come back the next day. That's got a lot to do with, number one, it just settling, but also like making sure your stuff is level. All right, so after this, we're going to torch, and then we're gonna blow our first layer of waves. I start warming up the back until I see it moving. And once you see it start moving, then you can push it out. You can make them go halfway, all the way. You get to choose. After that, you're gonna spray your Cell Magic on, and that's where the cells and the lacing pops up. And we're gonna let this cure overnight, and we're gonna come back and we are gonna do our second layer. My business has impacted the lives of others in a few different ways. I feel like the people around me, it's impacted them by, number one, me being happy and I can show up in a different way. I feel like when I'm living in my authenticity and when I'm happy and I'm fulfilled, I can show up for the people that I love in those kinds of ways. And it's impacted people that I've never even met through my live streams and my social media content. I hear all the time how much I help strangers that have now become family learn how to build their own business and how to show up for themselves. Me being in recovery and having the background that I had, I used my story to try to light a fire under other people's asses and get them to make moves for themselves and to show up for themselves in ways that they would have otherwise not shown up for themselves. So I feel like it's impacted people close to me and strangers I've never even met. All right, so our first layer has cured. We're gonna go ahead. I always like to add a second layer onto my ocean pours. It adds depth and dimension into my pieces, and that is something that I am known for. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna do a second layer on here. This next layer is gonna be back just a tinge, as if you were on the water and you see the waves coming up. They're never gonna be like identically in the same spot. So I'm gonna get this moved out of the way and we're going to mix up some resin. All right, I am pouring 4 ounces into here, and I'm doing B before A because A is thicker than B. Like, if you see how thick this is, if I was to pour that first, it'll just go in the cracks, like the corners of the cup, and we don't want that to happen. All right, so because this is so thick and cold, we're gonna warm it up in hot water, and this allows it to mix a lot easier. When resin is warm, it lowers the viscosity of it and it doesn't hold on to bubbles as much. It moves around a lot easier. So we're gonna let this sit for a little bit and warm up. All right, so make sure you dry your cup off. Resin and water do not mix. So if you don't dry your cup off, when you go to pour, that water's gonna mix in with the resin and it's not gonna be a good do. All right, we're gonna move this back. Make sure your piece is level. I know my I know my space is level. For this, I use a translucent teal. So what we're doing is we're gonna lay down a translucent teal and then blow a wave over that. And that gives it the perception that like you're looking into the water at waves that are crashing under waves. So it gives it that dimension. So the teal that I used to use, it was linked in like all of my videos, and everybody keeps messaging me and telling me that it's no longer being sold. But I found another one that works just as good, if not better. It gives you that same turquoise teal color. So it took a minute, but thankfully I found it. All right, so make sure your resin is mixed up, and I like to use paper cups. Reason being is because you can create like this peak right here, and you can control where the resin goes. So we're gonna do one for the turquoise, one for the white, yeah, one for the clear. I am a hard mixer. I get a crap ton of bubbles in this, but with torching and blowing it out, like it doesn't matter. It turns out perfect anyways. All right, we're gonna add very little bit into there because we still want it to be translucent. That's the color that I'm using. So I like about right there when you can see the stick underneath it, but it still adds that tint and that hue. A little bit goes a long way with that stuff. All right, so we're gonna mix up our white. And this I want to be opaque. Like, I like that to be super, super concentrated. All right, and then this one we're gonna keep clear. All right, we're gonna put the turquoise on. And I like to get sticky. I put it where I want it with my gloved hands. I feel like I can maneuver it better that way. So I just put it on. I keep it away from the edges. So if it was to just start going over the edges, you'd lose a lot of your product before you got to it. So as you can see, adding that tinted layer, it gives it that depth. And then you get to choose what this looks like and where the wave like pops up, whether you want it close to the first one or set back a little bit. And I always break the surface tension on the sides so that way as I'm going, the wave will just like flow over. All right, so I do hit it with a torch. So this next one is going to be clear. And what I do for this is I pour half on the resin and half off the resin. And this makes it stick to where I'm putting it. So I start off my board. And it is half on the cured resin and half in the wet resin. Now for the white, I do this one a little bit thinner than the first wave, just because it's less area that you're covering, and I want to see through to the bottom. So I'm gonna move a little bit faster. All right, I'm gonna hit it with the torch one more time, and then we're gonna blow it out. Okay, so I start working the back. You'll see when it's ready to go. You get to choose how much white you have. You get to choose how far back you blow your waves. Like, You get to choose that. Experiment, see what you like, and just try different things. You got different attachments for the head, and that's how you find your style, is by just trying different stuff. I have an e-course that goes over all of this in way more depth than any of my YouTube videos and than anything that I can give in this right here. Oceans are something that I've been doing since the beginning. This is what made me fall in love with resin. Alright, so as you can see, you've already got cells and lacing. But when you spray some magic on there, it adds even more. And that gives you the lacing and the cells that every ocean artist is looking for. So I'm gonna let this dry overnight, and then we'll come back tomorrow and we will get all the drips off and then add a hard oil finish. All right, so our second layer is cured on our ocean piece. When it comes to oceans, like I said, you can do 1 layer, you can do 2 layers, you can do 3 layers if you wanted to. I feel like the way that I do this, it adds a lot of depth and a lot of dimension, and that is what people are looking for when they're looking for their ocean pieces. So now that everything is cured, we're gonna flip it over and we're gonna get these drips off. You can use an angle grinder. I don't use my sander just because I used to, but then I had to replace the sanding pad on it, and that can get pricey. So I try to skip all that. You can use a file. I got these. It's a 3-file kit from Harbor Freight. You can get them off Amazon, but they work really good just for taking the drips down a bit. All right, so after that, we're gonna go in with 80 grit. So I always say, let me make the mistakes and you skip the learning curve, and that's where my e-courses come in. I break all of this stuff down. I have an ocean e-course. Oceans are my signature pieces because I've been doing these things the longest. Like, this is what actually made me fall in love with resin. This is what got me there. All right, so for the finish, I'm using my wood butter. This is a recipe that is known in the woodworker community. I share this recipe in a YouTube video. It's gonna be linked up down below. All right, so what you do is you just take a little bit and you're just gonna rub it on. I try not to get it on the ocean. It can be streaky if you do that, and well, you just don't want to have to clean that up. Alright, so you put that on, you let it sit for a little bit, and then you just wipe it off. When I make these, I make them in batches. So when I ship out my boards that have wood exposed, like charcuterie boards and cutting boards, things like that, I always ship them out a 2-ounce container of wood butter as well. And yeah. All right, so after it sits for a little bit, we're gonna go ahead and we're just going to get the excess of it off. And this stuff, like, it brings to life any of the grain that just looks thirsty, because you'll know when your wood is thirsty, like, it'll start looking parched. So get the excess off. Once that's wiped off, you're gonna do the same thing on the back. All right, so after this sits for a couple minutes, you're gonna go ahead and wipe the excess off, and you're gonna do it until the grain feels dry. It's just a wipe on, wipe off. And like I said, it's made from beeswax and mineral oil, so it is non-toxic, it's food safe, it smells so good. All right, so once you have all of the excess oil wiped off, we've now completed the ocean charcuterie board. These are my favorite. These are what got me started. Thank you guys so much for watching. I have an e-course that goes over resin ocean art in depth because I'm so passionate about these and I have mastered this skill right here. So if you want to check that out, it'll be linked up down below. Also, check out my socials. Those will be linked up down below, as well as everything that I used to make this piece. All right, guys, thanks for watching.